I think Steely Dan fans are going to love this album. Coming up next on Music Meanderings. Well, we haven't had a new Steely Dan album in a while, but there is a new band that sounds a lot like Steely Dan that I think if you're a Steely Dan fan, you're really going to want to know about if you haven't heard about them already. Canadian composer, pianist Don Brighthot, I believe that's how you pronounce his name. He has a band called Monkey House. Now, this group has been together since 1992, and they've had 9 albums, 7 studio albums, and 2 compilation albums. Wikipedia says the band makes melodic pop with a sophisticated jazzy twist and some horn arrangements, and that's a good way to sum it up. Now, they got on my radar recently because I subscribe to allmusic.com and their weekly email, which tells me about new releases. While reading that, I saw that they introduced this by saying it's a Steely Dan style jazz rock album. I thought, well, that's worth at least checking out, and I'm really glad I did. Very heavily influenced by Steely Dan. One of Brighthot's biggest influences, obviously. And in a recent It's the Groove podcast, he talks about Steely Dan being one of his biggest influences and his vivid memory about the first time he heard a Steely Dan song on the radio.
So I've told this a few times, but it sounds like something I made up, but I was riding my bike along my street in the spring of 1973, and I used to ride around. I can't think what age I was then, but 11 or 12 or something, and I would put my transistor radio in the basket of my bike because I never wanted to be without music for more than 60 seconds. At that point, I had just gone nuts over radio and was saving up my allowance to buy records and that kind of thing. And I was riding along, and the song Reelin' in the Years came on, and I literally pulled the bike over and thought, okay, well, I don't want to hear gravel under the tires. I don't want any other noise going on right now. I have to hear this thing. It's like speaking directly to my soul.
Coincidentally, I'm the same age as Don Brighthot, so I have similar memories of traveling around on my Stingray bike with the banana seat, sissy bar, and yes, a radio attached to the handlebars, listening to our local radio station, AM radio at the time. By the way, a link to that excellent entire interview is in the description below. Now, Brighthot is so into Steely Dan and so influenced by him, he's even written a book on Steely Dan called 33 1/3 Asia, and it is an in-depth look at that classic Steely Dan album. As I said, the band Monkey House has been around since 1992. Their debut album, Welcome to the Club, was released on the Aquarius label out of Canada. It included a cover of a song by Donald Fagen of Steely Dan that was never actually recorded by Fagen himself. Their latest release, Crashbox, was released June 6th, and it starts off with 2 very Steely Dan-esque numbers, Return of the Mayfly, followed by Someplace on Madison. And former Steely Dan trumpet player Michael Leinhart adds his distinctive touch to several tracks on the record, further adding to the obvious comparisons to the legendary band. Now, one difference between Monkey Box and Steely Dan is the vocal. Brighthot's vocal doesn't have the unique flavor, of course, of Donald Fagen. I mean, nobody sounds like Donald Fagen. However, the vocal here is very fitting and it complements the music well. Another difference, the lyrics, for the most part anyhow, are more direct. A big signpost of a Steely Dan song is kind of obtuse, obscure lyrics. You're not sure what they're talking about. I was always fascinated by a story told by Don Henley and Glenn Frey about Hotel California when they were asked how they wrote that song and what it meant. They said, we were just trying to write a Steely Dan song, and that's how it came out. So the lyrics a little more direct than Steely Dan lyrics. Coping with life in a less than perfect world seems to be a reoccurring theme here. And songs like the lovely Disappear in Plain Sight, What's Left of the World, Smoke 'em If You Got 'em, great song there, Bring the Stars Down. You know, it's hard not to use the term yacht rock here to describe the sound, especially on songs like Sundaying, Chasing the Muse, and Friday Night Jam. And Bright Hot proudly displays that obvious Fagan Becker influence. In fact, he says, if you think it's easy to sound like Steely Dan, then you do it. But seriously, the music has enough personality of its own to not just simply be written off as a blatant copy. I really like everything about this record, including the album cover picture, very reminiscent of the steampunk house from the animated Japanese Studio Ghibli film Howl's Moving Castle. If you're a fan of Steely Dan or just quality jazz rock, I don't think you'll be disappointed with Monkey House and their latest offering, Crashbox. Give it a listen. Let me know what you think in the comments below and subscribe to the channel for more music meanderings.